Hello, welcome to Between Two Worlds podcast. My name is Luke, and I am the host for today. Here we have the usuals of Dan and Ron.
Hello, this is Dan.
And this is Ron coming from the far corner of the podcast table.
There's
Four corners.
There's four corners. How's it the farthest one?
I think I am farther away.
No,
than
you're not.
anybody
You're right
else.
beside me.
Isn't the table like 4 feet long? And
It's rectangle.
by like 2 feet or whatever. So yeah.
But I am in my own corner. Just so you know.
We are all in our own corners.
Yes.
Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
We're going to just give you a quick recap.
Yeah, let's do it.
Me and Ron,
Yes.
Annalie, Danae, Ron's son Cody,
Yes.
my brother,
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yes.
and Andrew Gulovich, also known as Gitch.
yes.
The return of Gitch.
We went
awesome.
to St. Louis.
Oh, boy. Yes. It was. This is the second time I've been to St. Louis. Danny, have you been to St. Louis?
I went with you before.
I know.
Years ago. It was like
This is
a
when
dozen,
you did your
dozen
homework.
years ago. That's right. Yeah.
You did your homework in the room right across. Yes,
And
you did.
you snored like really loudly. Yeah, because that was 10 years ago we were there.
That was 10?
I think it was about 10 years ago when I was at CBC. So
Wow. Yes, because I remember. This is where Danny did homework. I remember that.
yeah.
Yeah.
You went to sleep and I did homework all night.
Wow.
So
That's a great story. That St. Louis we did a youth specialties conference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dan was not there, and you'll hear why in a bit. And it was good.
Yeah, it was very much a revival, I would say, for youth specialties. We had we'd gone 3 years ago,
And it was not good.
and it was not good. We said that'll be the last time we'll ever go, but just because of how it was run, and it just wasn't right fit for us anymore. And
you have to explain what youth specialties is, though.
Yeah.
Youth Specialties is a conference for youth pastors, youth workers that's held in the States. It's this huge thing. And there was 5,000 people there, tons of breakout sessions, tons of free T-shirts.
T-shirts.
Yeah,
Many.
Annalie won the contest. She had 5 free T-shirts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I only got 3, I think, and a hat.
I had 17 one year.
17?
17 was my record. Wow. We had a competition between
Yeah, I
us.
was going to ask you. Yeah.
Like Wayne Dreger was
Yeah.
youth pastor at Central Heights, and then there was a few other guys that would go and
Yeah.
have a competition who could get the most
17.
T-shirts.
That's incredible.
I didn't go to many sessions. I was just trying to get as many T-shirts as I possibly can. Just kidding. But what happened though? Youth specialties, it kind of went through some organizational issues and problems, and it changed owners and all those kind of things. I thought it was going downhill, and then Doug Fields, long time, probably one of the greatest names in youth ministry, so to speak, in North America.
Originally from Saddleback.
Originally Saddleback youth
Yeah.
pastor, and doing youth ministry, all those kind of things, written multiple books. Took over the organization along with Reggie Joyner from Orange, and they just dialed it up. They really did. You could tell that by the quality of workshops that they had, and the speakers that they had lined up. I was really
It was
impressed.
really good.
Yeah,
Really good.
I would say the big room stuff was lacking. It wasn't.
It would have been
best.
nice to have in the big room, like, lead pastors.
Yeah.
But it's still good.
It was still okay, but I missed that part. That youth specialties used to be known as the big room would be filled with senior pastors from the local area that could speak about the church and your commitment and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was always a good ad, but they've moved away from that.
Yeah, I think the last one I went to was about four or 5 years ago down in Dallas. And it was after that one I was like,
Yeah, it's changed.
I think
yeah.
I'm kind of done
Yeah.
on these things because they're awesome. I mean, Luke, for you at your age, doing ministry a few years, what did you think of it?
I thought it was great. It was really good to see people who are like me.
Yeah.
And like they did a bunch of stuff like, okay, if you ever felt this, put up your hand. And it's like cool looking around and seeing everyone has doubted their calling and doubted being their ability to do anything. And
Yep.
it was just really encouraging to hear from some of the senior youth pastors who've been in youth ministry for like 30, 40 years, and just to encourage us. And it was just so good. Hear new ideas, get new ideas. Like it was just a really good time for our team.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yep.
We're gonna be moving on, and Dan,
Yes, sir.
why did you not come?
Why is this? Here's the thing.
Not
we'll
yet.
just
Not
jump
yet.
into
Not
it?
yet.
Okay. All right. Okay. I was actually in the magical land of Disneyland.
Wow.
Is where I was. So, and I did not think I was getting back in time for the conference. So this trip was a surprise trip, really. My daughter had initiated this and planned this with her son. Well, he's 4, so he didn't do a lot of planning. But
he didn't do a lot of planning?
He didn't do a lot of planning, but she planned it, and then my wife had, of course, gone in on it, and I hadn't actually realized. So I was supposed to go to St. Louis with you guys. I'd committed myself to Ron, and then I had to back out. And then it turned out I got back the day before. So conceivably, I could have jumped on the plane and gone with you guys.
But Gitch was able to ride with us because you were not there.
Yeah, and it was awesome. And I got to grab coffee with Gitch, and that guy's just a great guy. It was awesome hearing how his ministry is going on Vancouver Island over there. So that was really cool.
Yeah. So this leads into our Here's the Thing.
Here's the thing.
You're on, Danny.
All right. Okay. So Disneyland. Now I want to be really sensitive here for all the families out there who have taken or go regularly to Disneyland. Yesterday I was having a conversation with one of our elders' wives, and they were heading off to Disneyland for Christmas and stuff like that. So I'm not saying don't go to Disneyland, but here's the thing. Whenever we do anything in life, as we go through life, we should hold up our life and our experiences to our biblical worldview and to our belief system, and just examine life, right? So I've never done this before. We're down there. We've got our 11-year-old son and our 20-year-old son with us. We've got my wife and my daughter and her 4-year-old son. We get about a couple days in, and my 20-year-old son, Jonathan, just turns to me and goes, "So, Dad, is Mickey the Messiah?" I texted a whole bunch of guys at that point because it was just a really, really bizarre situation. And I want to tell you, the very first night we get there, and I had to run out to get some burgers. Our flight was late. We get in a hotel. We're like 3 blocks away from Disneyland. And all I see on all the bus stops are all the homeless people sleeping on all the bus stops. Now, I live in downtown Chilliwack. Now, downtown Chilliwack, we have a lot more homeless actually than I saw in Anaheim. But it was just, you have all this pristine hotels, convention center, everything's so clean, even in the area. And then we have all these homeless people. And I got back to the hotel, and I was talking to my family, talking to my daughter, and she goes, "Oh yeah, actually, it's arranged in the morning. A bus comes and picks up all the homeless people and takes them back to LA for the day. And then they bus back at night and sleep on the benches." And I was like, "What?" And sure enough, in the morning, my daughter actually saw, because she's up early with her son, she saw the van come and pick up all the homeless people with their belongings and escort them into. But I got to tell you, so first off, I mean, in the morning, you see these hordes of people walking to Disneyland, passing all these homeless people. And as you go to Disneyland, you spend so much money to go to Disneyland. The first thing you do is when you walk in, you see store after store after store just selling all of this Disney merchandise. I mean, I saw people covered $400 worth of Disney swag. And I hear young adults, without any kids, young adults just screaming, "I love Disney. I love Mickey Mouse." And I was struggling with it. Even in the hotel where amongst all the people you're gathering, we had the free breakfast, there's camaraderie going on. I saw people from Northview, and it was so easy to start a conversation. It was just "Hey, what are you guys doing today? You guys doing a California Adventure? You doing Disney? You doing Universal?" And you just had all these conversations happening. And on one hand, I was going, "Man, this is awesome. I wish church could be like this." Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I was like, but this isn't reality. This isn't real. At church, our body of Christ, when we gather, yes, we are to be joyous, but we also have life and we have struggles. And all I could think was we are coming here to Disneyland. We're spending money like a lot of people would not normally spend, right? Depending upon your income, you could save up, and go and you do something like this. And as we went through the week, my boys, and I shared this at Vertical Edge, I shared this with grade 7 8 youth last night, and I said, our boys came to us at the end and go, "But Dad, thank you so much. This was awesome, memories and such like that." And I was just struggling because I go, "This is awesome, this is great." But then I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I've never gone with my kids on a mission trip. I've never taken my family on a mission trip. And I just, I was just holding those two things. I was juxtaposing those two things, in my mind, thinking, Disneyland, awesome memories, but but what's actually happening there? What are we doing? Is it just like get away? Now, people might think, Dan, you're just way overthinking that, and I'm sorry. That's actually what I do. So
Yeah, you do.
So and I just and I just wrestle with it. But so yeah, incredible experience. Would I go again? You know what? I would probably take some other grandkids again. I would go again. But like I said, whenever we have anything like this, this is a great conversation to have with your youth, with your kids. Take your family, but then these are great conversations. Like it's going on. Like what is happening here?
Yeah.
Like look at the larger picture.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
that's my thing.
So to answer Jonathan's question, is Mickey the Messiah?
I would say from some people's perspective, we got about halfway through the week, and when my wife asked me, Dan, would you like any sort of T-shirt with a Disney image on? And I said I would rather carve out my spleen with a spoon than put that Craven image upon my body. Maybe a little extreme example, but she's used to me.
Get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
Great transition into our talk for today, and that is about teenage discipline.
Whoa.
I don't know how that transitions.
I was great transition there.
But
You could just say about anything. Oh, that's a great transition into this talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're going to talk about how to discipline, or should you discipline your teenager?
Wow.
Is it something? Is that what kind of tips when kids get in trouble? Do you bring out the paddle, wooden spoon, metal spoon, spatula?
I could go through a few stories on that.
But your own personal.
Old personal stories. Discipline was always done by spankings. Did you get spankings, Dan?
Yeah. Wooden spoons.
Wooden spoons.
I hid the wooden spoon from my grandma once.
Did it ever break over your butt?
No.
Oh.
I had. There's two things that put fear of whatever in me. Is a couple of times my dad would actually say, "Go get something to give you a spanking."
Oh, get the switch.
Get the switch. So we had this thing, and it was called. This is the German name. I don't even know if I've ever told you this, Luke.
No.
It's called the Reimen, and it was Reimen. And I probably mispronounced it, but it's a thing that it's a leather deal that barbers would sharpen their.
Oh, that thing.
Oh, like a strap, like a
leather strap.
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
would, and so my dad had one of those, and that was the Reimen for some reason. If I'm saying that right, for all you low German, experts, but that was the oh boy, if go get it, know. And so then it disappeared for some reason. I'm not sure what happened. I will not take any credit for that at this point in time, but it did find a way outside the house one day, and it never came back. But then we'd get sent to get our own belts or something like that. And so yeah, we got spanked. I mean, we got clipped with the hand to the head.
What was the oldest?
That I got spanked? Oh boy, I was a teenager, for sure. I'm probably thinking, I want to say probably 14, 15. Yeah.
Yeah, see, when I say about the wooden spoon, my grandma would often threaten me with the wooden spoon. I don't remember it actually being ever used that often. I still remember hiding it just because of the threat of it. My grandma was like so gentle. I don't actually remember her doing it. My mom, I got spankings when I was young, but it's nothing I actually remember, Luke. Like, it's not like, oh, I remember that spanking. I know I got spanked, right, when I was young, never as a teenager.
How did you get disciplined as a teenager? Because I know you were rambunctious.
I had a very authoritarian stepfather, and I did not step out of a line a lot.
Oh.
When in high school, my mom split up with my stepfather, I kind of went off the rails there and kind of went crazy. And it just kind of happened. My mom didn't have a lot of control over me at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Ron?
Well, I think once I hit 16, I think it was just like I was on my own. I mean, basically that was. I mean, I took care of myself at 16. I mean, I was at home, but every month my parents didn't spend any money. I mean, I earned everything that I had. I bought all my own stuff. I mean, obviously I ate their food and stayed there, but I also worked on the farm. But my commodity I was a good worker, so my dad couldn't get mad at me because I worked hard. And so misbehavior was often overlooked at that point in time because I'd get in trouble at school and I wasn't doing well spiritually, wasn't doing well at school, all that kind of stuff. We got, all that kind of thing. But regardless of all of that, I think, misbehavior, was viewed as being something you get punished for.
Yeah.
So I would get punished for fighting with my siblings. I mean, that was the big thing. I mean, if we had, 5 of us growing up, my older brother and younger sisters. So what got us mostly into trouble was fighting with each other, not doing what we're told, talking back was, I mean, boy, you could lose your head if you, So, but you get a teenager, you're going to be mouthy. You're going to shoot from the hip a lot of times. So there were a few things that you just learned. Okay, I mean, this is going to get you into trouble, and that's no different than in today's world too. What do parents want to? They're going to discipline their kids for misbehavior.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So even for I don't remember ever getting disciplined.
You were not.
I was not a troublemaker.
Yeah, Cody was the one that would speak first, think later.
Yeah.
Do first, think later. So I mean, so you kind of, and I did that too. I had an older brother.
I was often embarrassed by Cody.
Yeah, see, my brother would shoot off his mouth, and I said, "Oh, you are so stupid."
That's what I was thinking about my brother.
Yeah. So,
oh my goodness.
So,
did you really just say that?
So I went underground with my behavior. My behavior was totally underground. My parents had no idea. And whereas Cody, he'd just foot and mouth, take one out, stick another one in, and away he'd go. And so then the younger Luke would learn from that. The girls, on the other hand, well, they were their own commodity, and they would just tear it up the way they wanted to. So, but yeah, no, you were very, but I would say you had a soft heart though too. I
didn't like getting in trouble.
You did not like getting.
I was one of those kids that if I got in trouble, I'd cry. Like, oh, Luke's name's on the board, I'd cry.
Yeah.
You did bad on a test, I'd cry.
Really?
Yeah. Up until like probably middle school, and then puberty kicked in. Best thing that ever happened. I stopped crying.
Yeah.
Haven't cried since.
Right.
Yeah. So, what are some things about teenage discipline that parents should know? Like, is there things that worth disciplining your kids? How to go through discipline? Like, is it just taking away their phones now, or not allowing them to go out with their friends, or what does teenage discipline look like today?
Well, I think even before we go into that, I think there's one thing the thing that I fear most. I think, Dan, you would probably think about this too, is that anytime you use the word discipline, there is a fear that comes into as a parent, that you're going to lose your kid. Like, will they like me? I mean, I think even as youth workers, sometimes we want to be friends with these students, but if we do not confront them, if we do confront them, they might just reject us. And I think as a parent, we fear the fact that maybe my kid will not only reject, my idea of what needs to happen here, but they reject me as a parent. And so that's a constant fear that I think parents face.
I mean, I think when we talk about discipline, we need to take a step back and talk about what does it mean to be a parent. Like what's our role? What's our responsibility as a parent, right? And if our role is to raise our children to know God,
yes,
and to honor Him and to glorify Him, because that is the best thing for them and for their life to reflect that holistically. Then we do need to be corrected. I mean, Scripture, right? Scripture is there so that we are corrected.
Proverbs
right?
3, Proverbs 3, 11 and 12.
Yeah. So if we start with that, and that has to start when your family is young, right? Like, that's not all of a sudden it's like, okay, I need to start putting some discipline in place here. Right? Because when we say the word discipline, some people will automatically go, oh, whoa, I'm not spanking my kid. And that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about discipline. At least that's not what I'm speaking about. I'm thinking about is how do I raise my youth well?
Yeah.
How do they understand what is expected of them from me as a parent, and I want to reflect God's wishes for them in the way that I raise them. And there are ramifications for our actions, right? I mean, that's life. I mean, we live in a state of grace as a child of God, but we also need to be corrected when we go astray, and
Right.
sometimes we don't want to use the word punishment, but sometimes, right, to help teach us, there are repercussions for our actions.
And I think bottom line is that healthy discipline, it issues the statement that I love my kids.
Yeah.
See, the healthy discipline. There can be unhealthy discipline, but I'm talking healthy discipline, realizing that just as much as God loves everyone and rebukes those who he loves, so a father, mother must also, discipline their children. So there is that whole understanding of what that means, and so there's healthy discipline here, and and let's face it, kids don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't expect a 5-year-old to get it. I don't expect a 10-year-old to get it. I don't even expect a 15-year-old to understand why I am disciplining them. And sometimes as parents, we think, I've got to reason my way in there.
Right.
Impossible. It won't happen. Like you will, and ultimately, discipline cannot happen after the fact. It needs to be backed up by a series of great communication and great relationships. We often think as discipline, you cross the line, boom, you're done. Now you're going to get the angry dad.
Yeah.
Versus, well, wait a minute, how am I going to handle this? Let's talk about this. We've already set some guidelines and perimeters in place. This happened, therefore there are these consequences.
And I know sometimes, like when Ron and I started telling stories about when we were young and stuff, I can totally imagine that there are parents that hear us speaking about like this, and they're automatically thinking in their heads of their own childhood experiences, and they're saying, there is no way I'm going to parent like my parents did.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, okay, fine. That's not what we're saying here.
No.
We're not saying emulate your parents. I know for myself personally, my stepdad, he was the father that I knew, didn't know my original dad. He did the best of his ability, but he had mental health issues. But that was the environment that I was raised in. So for my own kids, sometimes my reaction to my kids when they were young, my wife would have to say to me, like she would actually say that you're acting like I was acting like my stepfather, because that's what I was raised with. And so I needed to be corrected, even like in my
100%.
behavior and the way that I was raising my kids.
And that's the same as me. And I think I've told you this before, Luke, is that your grandpa, my dad, was a hit first and maybe talk, but usually not, you know. And then years down the road, I mean, my dad was a heavy disciplinarian. And I mean, I learned to duck and weave and all those kind of things because, I mean, he would just blow it. He had a horrible temper. Well, you don't raise kids with a temper. You don't discipline with a temper. And when you lose your cool, you yell, you scream, you say things you shouldn't say, you know. But that was my dad. And then I realized years after, this is long, you know, we've had kids and married, all that kind of stuff, of course. And then I remember talking to him about some of these things, you know, and because he's matured a ton, and he says, that is exactly how, in fact, I was better than my dad. My dad was worse than what I did to you, you know. And so, you know, when you say did it to the best of their ability, you know what? I think he did. You know, it's not that he didn't love me, he just didn't know how to show it. You know, and as parents, we need to show how we love our kids, even during hard times and disciplined times. And, you know, the old adage is, this is harder on me than it is you. I mean, that's true. I mean, discipline is tough love. It really is. It makes us weep. It bends our knees. It humbles us. When our kids screw up and when they make mistakes, it bends us. It breaks our hearts. You know, I mean, but we still have to respond in a godly manner, you know.
Yeah. So how do parents correct graciously, lovingly, but still sternly? Do any of you guys have anything to say?
Well, I think I touched on a little bit before, but you have to set up boundaries. You cannot surprise kids with discipline.
So if they did something wrong and they're like, wait, you never told me that was wrong.
That's right. Yep. So those things have to be out in the forefront long before it happens. And I think that's what often happens in the adolescent years. You know, you got these elementary kids, you know, and they got this concrete thinking that mom and dad know everything, blah, blah. There might be pushback here and there, but basically, you know, you got the iron fist, you know, you can you go to bed now, you eat this, that's who you play, you know, all that. Adolescent hits and they question everything. And there's moments that you realize that your son and daughter is changing. They want more independence. And so if you don't kind of walk through them with those adolescent years of change, you're going to miss some of these times. So you have to talk in advance, okay, when should you be in? What is your curfew? What can you watch? What can't you watch? Can you actually, gaming, like something that maybe parents won't do, is there any issues with gaming? Like, can my kid have any game that he wants? Well, absolutely not. But somewhere's along the line, mom and dad, you're going to have to figure out what's a right game, what isn't a right game. And there has to be a reason for it, So you have to put things in place is what I'm saying. Right. Before you can, and then have appropriate consequences.
And if you're adolescent, your teen, this is your first teen that is hitting these years, it's very difficult as a parent to experience this because, like you said, Ron, your children were concrete thinking that mom and dad have all the answers, and all of a sudden you have this questioning going on. That's a very difficult time for parents, and if you're not prepared for that, it can be that difficulty can come out in poor behavior towards your youth, where you're just responding in an angry fashion when kids are questioning your views or your values or what you're expecting them. That's why it is so good in the church where we have so many brothers and sisters who have walked this path before that, when your community group, in your small group, that you can come to and you can talk to people who have walked this path, right? How did this work for you? So rather than looking at specific, okay, well, what type of punishment or whatever are we going to put in place here? Because for every family, that's going to be different. And we're not talking about corporal punishment here. We're talking about what type of limitations on actions and stuff that you're going to put in place. But walking with other parents who've walked through this before, because so that you're raising the kids, you're raising your youth in the best fashion, so they grow more and maybe alleviate some of those bumps. So those bumps in life.
I think you have to have a goal in mind here that relationship has to be at the very center. Yeah, you don't want alienation. And sure, I mean, are teenagers going to be unimpressed with you, mom and dad, that you are disciplining them? Are there consequences to coming in late? Are there consequences in terms of, driving, taking away the keys, taking away the phone, whatever it is that you are thinking about, there's ways, but you should always have in mind, I don't want alienation here. I want relationship. Let them be mad, but in their anger, you can't slam doors. You don't use, bad language, all those kind of things. You can be angry. And we will talk about it when you're cooled down. Just like I don't want to talk to a teenager who's angry. A teenager doesn't want to hear me when I'm angry. So, mom and dad, if you have to take a step back and say, we'll talk about this in 10 minutes, but we're going to talk about it. Right now, I'm angry. I don't want to speak to you angry. I don't want to say things I shouldn't say because that's important. Right. And if I could just even add in here, the older I got, and the more you. Luke and Cody and Janae and Michaela, my kids, grew up, I realized that my parenting had to involve me saying, I'm sorry. I said something I shouldn't have said. I did something I shouldn't have done. Will you forgive me? And when you come to your own kids and say, I'm sorry, I should not have said that. I was angry. Wrong. And I mean, that puts it right on the teen's heart too. It says, okay, my dad's real. He goofed up because we're not perfect, and I think that's important too.
Yeah. And sort of going off this, is there an age where the parenting style changes when they're in their teen years, from teen to young adult? Because it seems like young adults, like people around my age or a bit younger, are not really growing up as much, and they're sticking around at home more. Is there still a role in correctiveness in those kids, or can they do what they want? Does that make sense?
So you're looking for an age?
Like yeah. So like when a kid graduates high school,
So we're talking graduates. Oh,
the
boy.
graduates. Does it change the
See,
relationship?
I think there's a whole new wave of this that we've got to address. And actually, I was thinking about this because we're going to introduce, our parenting conference for January and on. And actually, I was thinking about dealing with doing one on talking with Dan and Luke as well here with this. Is that how do parents parent the graduate? Because it is different. It has to be different. You can't parent that 18-year-old who has graduated from high school, who's living at home, maybe doesn't have a good job or is in that gap year or whatever it is that they call it nowadays, but they're not in high school anymore. But they're not an adult, but they're not a high school.
Because they're still living under your roof, using your car, eating your food.
They need you to survive. They really do. And that's just the world we live in. And so I think we have to change our parenting around that, because I think there's a lot of parents who are frustrated with that. Like, I thought high school was tough, but this is even tougher because now they're making decisions that I really don't know if I can actually speak into. And so there is a whole new world in there. And I think you have to understand that there has to be opportunities for you as parents to address their actions. Absolutely. If the actions are wrong, you have every right to address them.
Well, and that's the thing, because of the economic reality that we live in now. Just for young adults to be able to afford to live on their own is so difficult. Whereas traditionally it was a graduate, go off to school, get your own place. Now young adults are moving home. But the fact is, if they're moving, this is my contention, if they are moving back into your home and you're not punishing them because they're moving back into your home. But if they are living under your house, they may be wrestling with their faith and where they are in Christ and the decisions that they want to make and how they live their life. But that doesn't mean that you're wrestling with your faith.
No.
Right? So the way that you expect your children or young adults to live in your home and to honor you and to honor the way that you live towards God, that doesn't need to change. You can have those same expectations.
Yeah.
Right? And
I think it's your house.
It's your house.
This is the house that God has given you.
Yeah.
As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
And especially if you have younger children that are still living
at
in the home too.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there's huge. I mean, I can see how parents struggle with this because, you're going to have some kids in elementary and some in high school, and then the first one gets out the door or something like that, and then they're back, and, and the choices they're making, are they right, wrong, all this kind of stuff. But we realize that many kids, as you mentioned, Dan, when they graduate from high school, they're wrestling with their faith as well. That's that ownership thing. And so I think as a parent, I just don't want to have, I succeeded, I have, good kids. I want to be able to say my kids love God.
Yeah.
And so we are giving them that every opportunity at all times. And we have that relationship when they're adults, young adults, is to continue to say, okay, what's first in your life? And I think that's what we have to work at. And it's just that I am a parent and I still want to point my kids to Jesus when they're married, single, or whatever.
And just say something really quickly. When we talk about teens and we talk about discipline and struggles we might have, we have to understand that anytime there's growth in our life, that it is going to come out of a time of struggle. It is going to come out of a time of questioning. If you have a child, a teenager who's like 18, 19 years old and said, I've never had any difficulties with my youth, I've never had any struggles with my youth, you either don't know about it, they've hidden it very well, or there's going to be a point very soon where that young adult is going to start struggling immensely with who they are, because that has to happen for development to happen.
No. Thanks, guys. If you've stayed this long on the podcast and have listened all the way end, thank you. Ron, do you have an announcement for parenting stuff?
Well, we're going to be starting something in January, and it's going to be obviously with our middle school and high school parents. It's going to be a 4-week parenting series that begins January 5th, Saturday. It's a Saturday morning breakfast. We're gonna
so free breakfast,
and we want parents to come, and that's gonna be a kickoff for our parenting series. We have a number of topics that we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about sexuality. We're gonna talk about depression and anxiety. We're gonna talk about social media, all of the, and so there's a number of things that, and we're going to do this whole idea of adolescent development and discipline and all those kind of things. So between Dan and Luke and myself, as in the youth department, we want to already in advance tell our parents that just put that date down. It's going to be an unbelievable time for our parents to come together. As Dan mentioned here, parents need to know other parents who are parenting teenagers. That is one of the greatest gifts that we have as the body of Christ, is that we could walk alongside those who are doing the same thing that we're doing. Yeah. And so with the wisdom that is around this table, and we're going to be tapping others as well, but it's something we want to do as a church, is to encourage and support our parents all the way through.
Right. Awesome. This has been Between Two Worlds podcast. If you have any questions or any comments, you can email us at btw@northview.org. Catch you next week.